Please turn to page 146 for lecture notes. The purpose of lecture notes is twofold. First, it's an activity in which you are the giver of the information. You're going to explain key concepts and give background to your students so that they have a deeper understanding in their science, social studies, any of their core subjects. Today I'll model lecture notes for science. The other purpose for lecture notes is also to explain to students how to organize their ideas and information and take it to writing. That means that I will show children through this process how to plan their organizers, how to orally rehearse the information on their organizers, and finally they will write out that information. So lecture notes will provide background information for your students in their core subjects, as well as walk them through the steps of how to write information, and the final product will be a written piece of work about that information. When using lecture notes, your students need an 8.5 by 11 piece of plain paper, or they could put it on line paper, but make sure that they turn it in the landscape position. You will need to have a blank piece of paper as well. Put it underneath your document viewer, or you can have a large piece of butcher paper that you can mount on the wall as you are presenting your lecture notes. When you're giving lecture notes, you'll record the information on the lecture notes. The key piece about lecture notes, we know that it's going to teach the steps of how to write, and it's also going to give children background information. When we are teaching children how to write, we want to make sure that we have all the steps, that we're constantly telling them the steps of what they need to do when they're organizing their information as we provide them with that important content. Also, when you're teaching the students how to organize on their planner, you want to use keywords or simple icons. That's important. When you write out long sentences, then the students go into the copying mode. This shows students that when they are organizing information on their planner, they should use keywords or simple icons to represent their information. And when they're taking lecture notes, they should do so as well. When you start writing down sentences, again, you go into a copy mode and you're not doing that deep thinking that you need. And you'll have so many students who are yelling, wait, I'm not finished. This will keep the pace of the lesson going and the thinking. And remember, these keywords and icons will eventually become writing. And that means that students need to constantly rehearse and practice the information that you are imparting on them through this lecture note process. When they are rehearsing that information, that's when you are going to engage your students even more, and it will become an interactive activity, meaning that you're going to use all the different modalities. We're going to have hand motions, we're going to visually see icons and keywords placed on our organizers so that they make sense, as well as the students orally rehearsing in academic language how eventually they will write this information down. The writing is important. When you're presenting lecture notes to your students, you're always looking at showing them, here's the steps I'm going through in order to organize my information on my planner, your lecture note. I'm using keywords and icons to represent all this information so it's fast and quick, and I'm not copying, I'm just taking the ideas and recording them on my paper. I'm going to constantly rehearse my paper over and over again so that I can revise and practice how I'm going to eventually write it out. Every time I rehearse my organizer, what am I doing? I'm including repetitions in my lesson. And repetitions is how the brain learns, doing something over and over again for mastery, but in this engaging activity. So we have our writing and then we have our content. Not only is this giving content, but let's also remember one more thing. Lecture notes could be used in many ways. They could be used only to introduce a unit of study. Just at the beginning of a unit of study, you start with lecture notes. Or if there's any difficult concepts throughout your unit of study. As you go through, let's say, a science unit on, in this case, we're going to work on plants, you may have 4 or 5 different lecture notes that you have designated in order to introduce key concepts throughout that whole unit of study. Lecture notes don't have to be completed. Some of my lecture notes today will have a complete lecture note organizer, and the students will write it out. Sometimes we won't complete our lecture notes. We'll only put half of the information in, then we'll go to the textbook, read and record more information from the textbook on our lecture notes, and then finally write it out. So lecture notes can be a completed whole activity, or you can just have some of the information on your lecture notes and then go to the text in order to find, read, and record the rest of the information so that the students can learn that informational text is not something that you have to read from cover to cover, that you can actually go and research for specific items, read, and record. There's our background for lecture notes for the writing purpose as well as the informational purpose. Up above at the top of this page, I want to show you that I have my categories organizer with the hand sign, the purpose, as well as a sample of what the organizer would look like with the introduction, body, and conclusion. That's because today's lecture note will use categories. I provided this for you so that as we go through the lesson, you have a reminder of the hand sign as well as the organizer. But I will present many different hand signs and organizers to the students, and we will choose the one that matches for this type of writing so that they get practice of selecting the correct organizer. On page 147, I have a sample of this completed lecture note activity with the lecture note on top. Notice keywords and drawings, and down below is a sample piece of writing. We'll come back and revisit this after we finish our lecture notes. I want you to notice, though, that as I go through this video, I have already completed the lecture notes. You need to do that as the teacher. You have all your lecture notes completed. So as you're filling them in, you have this as a reminder of how you're going to teach the students and what concepts, how you're going to plan it on the organizer. Here's the organizer I'm going to use, and today's activity, it's not going to be an exact match. You're using this as a reference, and as you work with the students, you're filling it in, and it doesn't have to be an exact match. It's just for you to have as a guide. And when you're reading the lecture notes, it doesn't mean that your lecture notes needs to match what I have on this page. What I have on this page may not be what we end up with in this video when we're going through our sample lesson. That's because lecture notes is not about memorizing, it's about taking information, recording it in the right place, and orally rehearsing it so that it sounds right, and so that we can oral rehearse it so it sounds academic to write it down. Meaning memorization is not part of this activity. It's the language development and it's the concept development that we're focusing on. Let's get started. Please grab a blank piece of paper so we can walk through the lecture note steps. Boys and girls, you all have your blank sheet of paper in front of you. I am going to present a lecture note to you for our science lesson today. And lecture notes is a college level activity. Let me tell you what college kids do when they are taking lecture notes. They actually sit up tall in their seat. They have their pencil in their hand. They never put their pencil down. And they keep up with the professor. They make sure that when they're writing that information, they write it as fast as a snap. They are going to stay right there with the professor because they're college students. Boys and girls, we're going to do an activity right now called lecture notes. What is it called?
Lecture notes.
Okay, lecture notes is actually a college level activity. What is it, everybody? A
college level activity.
That's right. So when I give a lecture to college students, I'm going to show you what they do. First of all, go ahead and sit up nice and tall in your seat. Grab your pencil. And when I give lecture notes, and I'm going to be actually putting information up on the board here, college kids will be writing that information as well. When they write that information, do they go slowly or they keep right up with me?
Keep right up.
That's what I'm going to look for. I'm going to go at a nice pace. I say this to the class because it motivates them to record the information quickly. Nothing more frustrating than children taking notes and you have kids who are finished quickly and then others who barely have one little item down on their paper. I start off the lesson by saying what lecture notes are, and then I also talk about what a student would look like taking lecture notes so that they have that academic posture of sitting up tall, keeping their pencil in their hand. And then I challenge them and I tell them, when I give the lecture notes today, I'm going to give the lecture notes the way I would at a college level. Now, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to do it, I'm going to start at that college level. I'll stop and I'll change and lower the level if I need to, but I'm going to see if you can be college students today. So I provide that challenge to the students, and many children will sit up and really be engaged wanting to act like college students. So at this point, we have our lecture notes here and we're ready to go. Boys and girls, we are going to start our lecture notes, and lecture notes are a way that you can learn how to write information and also learn information. What do lecture notes do? Lecture notes explain to you how to write information, and they explain information. You tell me what lecture notes do, and then the kids go help us explain how to write information and explain information. Excellent. So today we are going to learn how to write information on our lecture notes, and the information that I'm going to explain to you is in our plant unit of study. We have already studied, and it's important that you let students know what they know before you introduce a new concept. So I'm going to say, we have already studied many things about plants. We learned that plants have an organ called a flower, and that flower is their reproductive system. That's where they make their seeds. Then we learned about pollination, and that's a process they go through in order to produce the seeds in the flower. Today, our lecture notes is going to be about, well, what do they do with the seeds? And that is called seed dispersal. So today we are going to learn about seed dispersal. When college students are introduced with the topic of study, they don't just sit there and say, okay, that's what we're going to learn about. First thing they do is they go like this. They say, what's the big idea? And in this case about seed dispersal, so we'll say, what's the big idea about seed dispersal? So then I have the students shout that out. What's the big idea about seed dispersal? I need to tell you the big idea, so I need to have an introduction for my big idea, a body for the information, and a conclusion. What do I need? Introduction, body, conclusion. Let's draw 2 lines. 1, 2. And I always go, wow, look how fast you're doing that. And it motivates them. And they quickly draw the lines. And I say, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for college students. Look how quickly you're drawing those lines. Excellent job. And it really does motivate them to do this quickly. Now we have these 2 lines in our paper, so we're ready to record the big idea. And that's going to be where? In the introduction. After my introduction, what will there be? The body. What else do I have? Conclusion. Let's go up to our paper. This top part is my introduction. What's here in the middle? The body. What's here at the bottom? The conclusion. That's easy. That's our information organizer. Let's fill it in first with the big idea. Where does the big idea go? In the introduction. Because if you're introducing information, you need to always start off with the big idea. And my big idea has a secret formula. Let's write our secret formula down. S, light bulb. What's the secret formula? SS, light bulb. What does that mean? So I have my students ask me that. The first S is for setting. Setting tells us, point to your wrist like a watch, time and place. We're not going to have a time and place today, so we'll put an X there. The middle S is for subject. Put your hands together like you're looking at a textbook, and in this case, our science textbook. Open it up and say subject. Ready? Subject. Who or what is this information about? You say that. Subject. Who or what is this information about? And it's about plants. Oh, so we're just going to write plants there. I could draw a plant or I could write plants. I think I'm going to just write plants. Look how quickly I'm writing it. You write it down quickly. That's what college students do. They stay right with me. They don't get behind. Wow, look how you're staying with me. This is really fast. I could even be lying right now. There may be children that just have the PL on their paper and they're not done writing the word plants, but I say that and it quickens their pace. First thing we're going to do when I take lecture notes, and I'm telling you we're learning about the periodic table, let me tell you what college kids do. They do not put up with that. They put their hand on their hip, they point at me, and they go, what's the big idea about the periodic table? Give it to me, guys. Ready, go.
What's the big idea about the periodic table?
Excuse me. I'm sorry. You're just like college kids. Okay. The big idea has a secret formula. Go like this. Go secret formula. So to get a big idea, go to the top of your page, write a little S. Go to the middle of the top, write another S. Go all the way over to the side here, Draw a quick light bulb. Should it be an art project or a fast sketch? Fast sketch. My secret formula for the big idea is what? SS light bulb. All right, let's go back and do what every college student does, and they always reread their notes. Let's go back and put a hand up for a plant. Ready, everybody? Plants. Say it again. Plants. All right. Let's go over to our light bulb. The light bulb is, what's the big idea about plants? And who cares? Why is it so important? So first I need to tell you, what's the big idea? What information am I going to tell you about plants? Well, this information, because I could tell you a lot of things about plants, their life cycle, I could tell you about the things they need to grow, but this information that we're going to learn today are the 4 ways. Oh, let's write 4 ways there. And let's put some arrows, 4 different arrows, and put some seeds at the end of those arrows. We're going to learn the 4 ways plants disperse their seeds. Let's go back and let's read that information. Ready, everyone? Plants disperse their seeds in 4 different ways. Disperse. Turn to your buddy. What do you think disperse means? Do you think it means that they eat or they scatter their seeds? Turn to your buddy and tell them. So then you hear kids go, scatter. Ooh, so when we say disperse, should we go like this or should we go like this? Oh, like that. Maybe we could even write disperse down. So we have our plants disperse their seeds in 4 different ways. We had our subject. We have our what's the big idea? What information am I telling you about this subject? And I can't leave the big idea until I tell you the last part, and that is, who cares? Why is this so important? So why do plants disperse their seeds, scatter them? Because there's not enough room for a seed to grow if it's trying to grow right next to its parent plant. So what do they need? Plants need sunlight, so they need to be dispersed so that they can get to the sunlight. If they're underneath their parent plant, the parent plant will be blocking the sunlight. All right, I'm going to give you a list here, so let's put a comma after that sunlight. They need food, so let's put like a tongue here. And food could be water, the nutrients from the soil, which if they were right next to their parent plant would be sucking in all those nutrients and water. So they need to be further away from their parent plant so they can get to their own water and nutrients. And one more thing, they need space. So they need space to spread out their roots, to spread out their leaves, to grow. If they don't have sunlight, if they don't have water and the nutrients of the soil and space to grow, what's going to happen? They're going to die. So plants, because they don't have feet, they can't walk around, they had to figure out plants have to have ways in order to spread out those seeds, or their seeds won't grow into plants. So let's go back and read this big idea because that's what college students always do. Let's get our plant ready. Plants developed 4 ways to disperse their seeds so they have enough sunlight, food, and space to grow. Ooh, I love that. That's excellent. But I don't have to say it that way. Let's see if we can start with the who cares why it's important part first. In order to have enough sunlight, food, and space to grow, plants disperse their seeds in 4 different ways. That's another way I could say it. Plants developed 4 ways to scatter their seeds so they have enough sunlight, food, and space to grow. Look at that. I've said this information in several different ways. What am I doing? I'm looking at the ideas, the keywords and pictures, and I'm just practicing different ways to say it until I like my big idea. I have my students then turn to each other and they practice chanting out the big idea. And I listen to see if they can say it. Do they know the concept that I just said? Are they able to orally say this information so that it makes sense? And if not, what do I need to do? Let's come back and we'll rehearse it again and we'll practice it again. When I come back, if I notice that the students are unable to say it, when I come back, Instead of saying, well, boys and girls, let's practice because you're not getting it, that doesn't help students and it doesn't motivate them. I just pretend that I heard kids say things, and I'll come back and say, wow, I heard 3 different college level sentences. Let's go back and practice them. I can't believe the sentences that I heard. I want to say them aloud. Let's practice what I heard others say. And then we go back and we practice again and again. But I use that in order to motivate them so they think that they came up with the information instead of, oh, we didn't get it, we don't know how to do this, and she's going to teach us again. Does not motivate kids, and they usually don't want to participate after a while. Stand right in front of your chairs because it's really fast. Are you ready? Tell the big idea about matter so far. Ready? Get your trees ready and tell the big idea. Ready, set, go.
All living things and non-living things, also known as matter,
Are made of the elements on the periodic table. Take a seat. Quick here. Now, do we have our big idea already?